Welcome to the Quarter Report. It's a brand new show which combines all that we've been doing over the last few years on the podcast and on YouTube into exactly one show, coming out in audio podcast form and on YouTube. This is literally the maiden voyage. My name is Dan Corder. I'm hosting the show. You will also be hearing the voice of, it's hard to really sum up all the things that he does, but you'll also be hearing the voice of Eric, who is an editor and a researcher, and I sum up as the technical, intellectual, and editorial juggernaut of all that we do here on the Quarter Report. Hey, Eric.
Hey, Dan. How you doing?
Was that a fair description?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, now if technically, editorially, or intellectually we fail you in any way, you can send emails to Eric specifically. I will be putting his email address at the end of the show. Okay, let's get going on the first ever episode of the Quarter Report. It's been an absolutely massive week in South Africa. So today we're going to talk about Trump's 30% tariffs against South Africa and the rest of the world, and the white alt-right's claims, the South African white alt-right's claims that it's all the ANC's fault, which is, newsflash, breaking news, shouldn't shock you by this point, a lie. What you do need to know here is if you're brand new, the show has a WhatsApp line, 0607 613 436 is the number. When you messaged us, that's the way to contribute to the show. Voice notes and WhatsApp messages that will be read out and incorporated, because this is a community and we do the dialogue and we talk a lot about it. And we talk a lot amongst ourselves. It's not just me speaking with you, it's us speaking to each other. So save the number 0607 613 436. If you're listening to this, you can find us. Just search the Quarter Report on the Three Beanies Network with Dan Corder on YouTube. And if you're watching this, then search the Quarter Report on Spotify or Apple to listen to the full podcast. Cool? Cool. All protocol observed. No further caucuses. Let's get going. Okay. Let's start. Trump's America, MAGA America, placing 30% tariff on South Africa. That happened earlier this week, but let me just be clear in case you don't know. Tariffs were placed on basically every single country in the world. A minimum baseline 10% tariff, and then from there it just went up based on each different country. Now, some people, some white alt-righters like Kallie, Kriel, most significantly of Afroforum, trying to sell Trump to into the woe-begone awfulness allegedly of South Africa, the terrible things that are happening here, and the evil ANC, and how hard it is to be white, and particularly a white Boer Afrikaner, particularly just so hard to be a white farmer. That guy. He put out a post after South Africa was awarded or got or received or punished with a 30% tariff on all imported goods that we're importing to the United States. He put out a post saying, this is the ANC's fault. The ANC made this bed and now we all have to lie in it. This is America lashing out at South Africa as a whole against ANC policy and decision making for the last handful of years. Now, that is 100% absolutely bona fide, thoroughbred a lie. Actually, what happened is the evil knickknack, who is the president of the United States, he and his crack advisory team, and I use crack there in the drug sense, the crack advisory team of the United States of America decided that they would place tariffs on all the countries of the world. And then when they put out this ridiculous kind of like print list that of all the different countries, we figured out how they'd worked out the tariffs per country. Here's exactly what they did. And they tried to confuse us with some kind of complicated mathematical equations with lots of like weird Greek symbols and that. And then a couple of economists just went, okay, newsflash, here's actually what it means. For every single country in the world, the United States figured out the trade deficit between the United States and that country, which essentially means a trade deficit means that the United States is importing more from that country than they are exporting. So there's a deficit for the United States, which makes sense, by the way. They're the richest country in the world. They import the best and most high quality goods because their people can afford to pay with the US dollar and live arguably some of the highest qualities of life of any country in the world and any country's people. So they figured out the trade deficit. And then they took the value of each country's imports to the United States. And they took the trade deficit between a country and the USA, or USA and a country, divided it by the value of the imports to figure out a percentage. And then for every single country with that percentage, they divided it by 2. And that's literally what Trump's board says. So you'll see on the one side is a list of percentages, and then the other side is half of those percentages, which is the tariffs that Trump's America has put on all of these different countries. And aside from the fact that it's terrible economic policy, aside from the fact that it's going to cause almost immediate rampant inflation in America, the likes of which Americans have not seen since before World War II and the Great Depression, aside from how stupid it is, the most important thing to understand is that Trump's America calls it reciprocal tariffs, to make it seem like other countries have been using tariffs and other means to screw over America, and America is just matching those tariffs back, and that therefore it's fair. That's absolutely not the case. The amount of tariffs and the amount of trade penalties that exist between countries has absolutely nothing to do with your trade deficit divided by the value of your imports, and then divided by 2, which is what they did. And it's led to some absolutely absurd outcomes. Do you see this island that has got only penguins on it that now has to pay 10% tariffs to the United States?
Wait, which island is that?
It's like the Heard and McDonald Island. It's only got penguins. And now the running joke is that the penguins are going to stop sending fentanyl to America or whatever they care about. It's like absolutely ridiculous. There's another island which has virtually only got UK and US bases on it, military bases. Yeah. They're getting tariffs.
The US military bases.
The US military bases are getting tariffs in the United States of America for their terrible trade deficit. It's absolutely, the whole thing is insane. Completely stupid and wrong. But how does it work for South Africa? So they figured out that the trade deficit the United States have with South Africa, which means we export more to South Africa to the US than we import. The trade deficit divided by our net imports or exports that we send to the US divided by 2 is 30%. That's the 30%. It's got nothing to do with the ANC. And you can see that quite obviously because Lesotho got 50%. There's no ANC in Lesotho. In fact, Lesotho is the country that Trump had never heard of a few months ago, famously. There are different countries like Madagascar and Botswana, which got higher tariffs than we did. There's no ANC there. I think it's 6% tariffs in Thailand, 46% tariffs in Vietnam. There's no ANC there, unless there are ANC branches in Bangkok and Hanoi that I just haven't heard of yet. I mean, that is, I guess, possible, but also not the case. And so Kallie, Kriel, and the white alt-right trying to peddle this idea that these tariffs specifically are the fault of the ANC. Absolute nonsense. And Eric, I don't know if you've seen online, but yesterday I said a catchphrase that now a lot of people want merch of, which is resist the cuck.
Resist the cuck, yeah.
A lot of people are getting into that now, so I guess we should just throw that in there, hashtag resist the cuck, because that does seem to now be something that we do.
I love it.
I think it's pretty good, man.
I'm still trying to think about, are penguins foragers?
Yes.
Are they?
Yes.
Are they? Do they collect berries? I don't know. That's why I was just trying to figure out how they were going to pay the tariffs. I'm still circling back on that.
I don't know, man. I don't know what the penguins have been sending to the United States. The craziest part of all is that Australia got tariffs, but one of their islands got lower tariffs. Same with France. That makes no sense. So MAGA America didn't even know that some of these islands are actually a part of mainland countries.
Right.
And so there are parts of these countries with lower tariffs than the mainland of these countries. It just blows my mind because this is one of those most clear examples that even the most hardcore MAGA supporters can't get around of how stupid Trump is. Like how jaw-droppingly moronically dumb he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's in control of, and now he's upended the world economy outrageously. Anyway, let's talk about what these tariffs mean for South Africa. Because what kind of exports do we send? So the first thing that's really important to know is that there are actually exemptions in our tariffs. Our goods being sent to America to be tariffed 30%, mainly around raw materials and minerals. Around 90% of our exports of key raw minerals and ground materials, I guess. About 90% of them are exempt from these tariffs because America still really, really, really needs all of our key mineral resources. And so those are exempt. The main industries that export to the United States from South Africa are part of our farming industry. And it's mainly citrus, although it's also like some kinds of nuts, but it's mainly citrus farmers who are going to be deeply screwed by this.
There's got to be some wine in there as well, right?
There's obviously got it. Well, I mean, isn't wine citrus?
Now you're asking hard questions, Dan.
We know, Eric Eric makes these incredible research documents and he really thinks that he's covered everything, but then every now and again I go, is grape citrus?
I want to say no, but I'm also just not sure.
What do we think a citrus is?
Lemons, oranges, anything quite acidic. Is a grape quite acidic?
This is a big side quest.
Yeah, this is neither of our area of expertise.
Okay, you look that up and chip back in when
Sure.
Eric is also the fact checker. I told you, technical, intellectual, and editorial juggernaut of the show. You figure out whether or not our wines and citrus will be affected by this.
I'm on it.
Nice. So that's probably what is happening now. But the important thing to understand is that we need to resist the cuck. And Kallie, Kriel and others claiming that this specific 30% tariff is all the ANC's fault and somehow we're being punished harder than other countries is absolute nonsense. The United States is even tariffing Israel, their best chums in the world. That shows you the extent to which these are pretty much universal treatment for everybody. So resist that cuck. But I will tell you that just now, in the last few hours, a US senator put forward a proposal in the US government, or at least their version of US Parliament, to do a comprehensive review of the bilateral relations between South Africa and the United States, which they've been threatening to do for a while. And this senator argues that South Africa has basically acted against US national interest and betrayed the US by working with enemies of the US like China and Russia. Hilarious, because I don't think Trump would consider Russia an enemy of the US anymore. Another massive thing that he's upended geopolitically in the last just few months. But also because we have taken Israel to the ICJ, also because we have welcomed and had discussions with Hamas, amongst others, although I will remind you that doesn't seem to annoy America when it's other countries like Qatar. They're very chilled with Qatar engaging with Hamas, with Egypt engaging with Hamas. It's just they got a particular pet peeve with South Africa that could probably be reduced to Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson. But that bilateral review, or that review of our bilateral relations, is almost certainly now coming after it had been threatened for a long time, well back into the Biden administration. Eric, the grapes.
The grapes are definitely not citrus. Can confirm.
You see, even we learned something on this.
They're a separate genus.
It's a separate genus.
Absolutely, yeah.
That is a unnecessarily big Latin word.
You asked me to double check.